Now, Dr. John is going to speak to us on the philosophy of natural family planning. The most important thing about natural family planning is, of course, the philosophy, because that's what it's all about. Why we're all involved in this. We're involved in it because of the underlying philosophy. If it wasn't because of that, well, then we would be recommending what has come to be called the Fertility Awareness method. These people in IPPF and Planned Parenthood, they're not only trying to get into the field of natural family planning, but they've borrowed our terms, such as fertility awareness, and Planned Parenthood groups in America are now offering what they call the Fertility Awareness method, which is distinguished by the fact that they offer barriers in conjunction with NFP. And terms like family life, they're now offering family life courses. And we had some discussion while we were away about inventing a suitable term which would be expressive but unattractive enough for them not to try and commandeer it. So we might run a competition on that. John is going to speak to us then about the philosophy of natural family planning, and every word will be of value. So let's listen with composure to John's presentation.
Thank you very much, Kevin, dear friends. Our new President, Francis Wallace, has authorised me to put to you a proposal just before I begin to present my paper, that we pass a resolution deploring the decision of the Privy Council in regard to Mrs. Victoria Gillick's application, and that we make that a press statement in our different environments. So on Francis's behalf, I put that to you, and I'd be glad if you would carry it by acclamation. It's proposed that the executive of the Natural Family Planning Council of Victoria will prepare a statement, and you might like to do it yourselves, or for yourselves, that is, and possibly in the discussion this afternoon a few ideas might be forthcoming about the nature of the statement. Despite the almost universal longing for peace, justice and brotherly love, it's a troubled world. Virtually every country has its share of humiliating poverty and other forms of social injustice, even slavery of one kind or another. There's widespread violence, terrorism, wars, including civil wars originating in ideological, religious or racial antagonism. We have the problems of pornography, sexual promiscuity, prostitution, the drug traffic, sexual perversions, sexually transmitted diseases of epidemic proportions, abortion and other forms of child abuse. Modern society is cursed by marriage breakdown and disintegration of family life, with calamitous effects for both parents and children. In Western society, it is now the one-parent family which is most often the victim of poverty. There is no doubt that the forces of evil are working to destroy the family. The fundamental issue is the battle which has existed since the dawn of human history and will last till the end of time. A battle for the allegiance of human minds between two irreconcilable philosophies. Only the battlefield and the tactics change. The first of these philosophies is that of secular humanism, which teaches that life is of no more value than the immediate present, that man has no essential dignity or value greater than the plants and animals which share his environment, and that patterns of individual behaviour are to be determined by considerations of personal advantage and expediency, not by responsibility to objective moral principles. The relationship between individuals then becomes utilitarian, resulting in a moral permissiveness which is one of the most destructive sicknesses of modern society. Ethics become autonomous and situational. The intellectual climate is one of practical nihilism, rationalised in terms of Marxist sociology. Individual dignity is ignored and freedom is lost. The vicious persecution of heresy, still associated in the minds of many people with the religious fanatics of a bygone age, is now the prerogative of political ideologies convinced that they contain the formula for the construction of utopia. The individual looks at the world from an egocentric base, seeking the pursuit of pleasure as the only attractive activity in an existence which is otherwise meaningless. He tends to develop a contempt for human life, perhaps limited to a dislike of the underprivileged, who are to be despised for their inferior social position and denied the right to a fair share of the world's material resources. A commitment to a marriage contract is rejected, genital intercourse appreciated only for physical pleasure, and the child is seen as an acquisition to be evaluated in competition with other property. Fertility mainly as a burden to be suppressed or destroyed. Now, the second philosophy sees man as immeasurably removed in importance from the rest of visible creation, an individual whose life is significant because he is created in God's image, with a temporal destiny to rule the world and an eternal destiny of happiness in union with his human brethren within the family life of God. This is the religious view of man, which acknowledges his freedom to make personal decisions in matters of moral significance, the dignity which such freedom involves, and the responsibility to be held to those decisions. In other words, when a human being recognises God as creator, he develops an understanding of himself. The Christian specifies every human being as one created by God in his image and likeness, loved by God, saved by God, adopted by God as a son, and identified with Christ himself. Human life is now of transcendent importance, and the child becomes the focus of love within the family, coming to us as unique, precious beyond measure, but helpless so that he can teach us the meaning of love. I'll just turn it off. It's okay. At the human level, one can see the origin of the family in reproductive biology, in the physical helplessness of the infant, the emotional and psychological needs of the child, and also in the nature of the love for each other that a man and woman are capable of experiencing. Each family begins when a man and woman develop such a depth of love for each other that they make a permanent public commitment that henceforth there will be not two lives but one. Each makes a gift of himself or herself to the other, a gift which is complete, acknowledging the responsibility that is involved in making the gift and in the acceptance of the gift of the other person. This unique love, marital love, is a reality, not an ideal, or not only an ideal, and it brings into existence an inherently indissoluble union of one man and one woman, ordered by its very nature to the procreation and rearing of children, and fostering and sustaining the pledge of undying fidelity. Only this reality can count as marriage, and it is clearly distinct from other kinds of male-female relationships. This is what the Church means when it teaches that God is the author of marriage, and that from his creative will, and not from the decision of the two persons involved, does marriage derive its special characteristics. Love and life go together. This conjugal love, the greatest of all love between human beings, was meant to be the origin of all human life. The child, as well as the act of sexual intercourse, manifests the union of the spouses in one flesh. The true significance of the physical act of sexual intercourse is now understood. It is an intimate, exclusive manifestation of the totality of the gift, appropriate only between a man and a woman whose marriage has made them spouses. But as the Bible has said, the heart of the world has grown coarse, their ears are dull of hearing, and they have shut their eyes, for fear they should see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their heart, and be converted. Marriage is therefore not concubinage, nor is it that kind of partnership which may be established within a homosexual relationship, nor is a family a mere aggregation of persons, even though such a group may be inspired by noble motives to function as a family substitute in the care of children who have been denied normal family life. Christ has made marriage a sacrament, so that now, in all its beauty, it is to be joined with the deep, faithful, exclusive love which characterises the covenant that God has made with his people and Christ with his bride, the church. The family, then, is an organic unit composed essentially of father, mother, and children. In a wider relationship, it includes grandparents, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, and cousins, a kinship group of members linked by ties of blood, marriage, and adoption. It is structured to bear and rear children and to care for the young, the sick, and the old. Solidarity with the community, especially its helpless and oppressed members, is the crucial element of the family mission. And that's why in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the family has come to be described as the natural and fundamental group unit of society entitled to protection by society and the state. Well, that, of course, reminds us of the primary focus of our work. That is, to restore the child to the centre of love and concern within the family, to build up family life, especially by helping as best we can the husband and wife to love each other better. Now, in this enterprise, of course, natural family planning has a very special and primary place, because the motivation in the use of natural methods of regulating births is to learn to love, not to contracept. The husband and wife acknowledge the uniqueness and dignity of every human life, and the fact that each individual comes into existence at conception as an expression of God's will. Their minds, as well as their actions, remain open to God's creative power. These elements may be only dimly perceived, or perhaps not at all, but all husbands and wives experience the benefits of the communication and the cooperation that are established, the deeper understanding of each other, the sharing of responsibility in deciding whether a further pregnancy at this time is desirable or not, and above all, the generosity that is drawn from each of them so as to strengthen and purify their love. The whole family benefits because the children are enveloped in happiness and security, and it's from the school of love, which is the family, that benefits flow to the whole of society. Now, I just wanted to refer briefly to what one might call the theology of the ovulation method. And I've often said before that this diagram, with which you are familiar, of course, because it's in the atlas of the ovulation method, is a diagram that can take you around the world, because, of course, it's excellent for explaining the hormonal patterns, for explaining the concept of the basic infertile pattern, the early day rules, the time of maximum fertility in the cycle, and all the rest. But at the moment, I want to talk about it in another way. Because the woman's reproductive cycle is really the revelation of God's creative plan. When we look at the early pre-ovulatory section of the cycle, that's the infertile days in the pre-ovulatory stage of the cycle, we see there that it is God's intention that a human life will not come into existence as the result of an act of intercourse. Now, when we look at the fertile phase, which is defined by the ovulation method, we understand that now it is God's creative plan, speaking generally, that an act of intercourse will result in the creation of a new human life. And then after the fertile phase is over, we see again that God's plan has the intention that an act of intercourse at this time will not bring into existence a new human life. Now, therefore, if prudence has dictated that the husband and wife should avoid a further pregnancy at this time, they can see how that may be accomplished in perfect conformity with God's plan and with absolute, total acceptance of His creative power, and, of course, absolute and total acceptance of any child that may come into existence. In other words, therefore, the husband and wife will engage in sexual intercourse as an expression of their love and in order to deepen their love during those early pre-ovulatory infertile days, and during the fertile phase will abstain from intercourse, so that in no way do they undertake any action that would obstruct or interfere with the creative potential that Almighty God has placed within the woman's reproductive cycle at that time, and so forth. So that's what I mean when I say that in fact the woman is, in her reproductive cycle, is revealing to man, to her husband, God's creative intent throughout their whole married life together. So I think we could perhaps turn that on. Thank you. Well, now, in our efforts to protect the individual by protecting the family, we recognise the difficulties and the sorrows which may be encountered. Love, in its generosity, seeks always the welfare of the beloved person, and therefore makes the lover vulnerable. It's part of the glory of conjugal love that the possibility of suffering, the nature of which is hidden in the future, is a sacrifice that is accepted with joy as part of the commitment in marriage. And we know too, as St. Augustine told us, that God does not command the impossible, but when He commands, He warns us to do what can be done and to ask for what cannot, and gives help so that we can. It's only when we've truly accepted ourselves by acknowledging our creation by God as an act of love that we can develop selflessness in our conduct towards others. Conjugal love, for all the intensity of emotion that is experienced when the commitment is made and accepted, for all the sincerity and strength of the promise, is a fragile treasure requiring vigilant protection and nurture. The husband and wife must maintain the will to love, even when they may no longer emotionally feel love, and then work to bring each other towards perfection. A good marriage exists, as the poet Edwin Muir has said, when each gives to each what each most wants to give, and each awakes in each what else would never be. It's the love which develops within the family that teaches us the wonder of our fertility and respect for human life, all human life. The special role of the family in caring for the helpless infant, the old people, the handicapped and the disadvantaged can now be perceived as fulfilling an irreplaceable role in society. And I think that's why Germaine Grisey, for example, said on one occasion, the proper theological name for natural family planning is Christian chastity. So it's through the development of this love within the family and through our proper understanding of natural family planning within God's creative plan that we come to see that human life is of transcendent importance and the child the focus of love within the family. And now I think we are able to accept the exhortation that Pope John Paul made. It was during his visit to Washington in October 1979. And this is what he said: "We will stand up every time that human life is threatened. When the sacredness of life before birth is attacked, we will stand up and proclaim that no one ever has the authority to destroy unborn life. When a child is described as a burden or is looked upon only as a means to satisfy an emotional need, we will stand up and insist that every child is a unique and an unrepeatable gift of God with the right to a loving and united family. When the institution of marriage is abandoned to human selfishness or reduced to a temporary conditional arrangement that can easily be terminated, we will stand up and affirm the indissolubility of the marriage bond. When the value of the family is threatened because of social and economic pressures, we will stand up and reaffirm that the family is necessary not only for the private good of every person, but also for the common good of every society, nation, and state. When freedom is used to dominate the weak, to squander natural resources and energy, and to deny basic necessities to people, we will stand up and reaffirm the demands of justice and social love. When the sick, the aged, or the dying are abandoned in loneliness, we will stand up and proclaim that they are worthy of love, care, and respect. Well, I think that's what we mean when we talk about natural family planning. It's for these reasons that we are so particular in our accreditation of the teachers, in the pledges that we ask them to make. We're really asking them to accept what I've put to you as the true philosophy of natural family planning to which we all subscribe. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, John, for that profound and lucid, updated discourse on the theology of love, of marriage, and of the family of the late 20th century. This whole concept of the family is now, of course, inseparable from that of responsible parenthood, as a succession of popes have made clear to us. And John has married that, as it were, into the theology, the moral and philosophical significance of the natural and hence God-designed biorhythm of the menstrual cycle. And the final item of significance, of course, is the child with its right to be welcomed and loved into the warmth of a happy family. So thank you, John, for putting together for us all the things that we feel we'd like to say, but never seem to be able to say in the way that you do.